And I'd like to introduce our featured presenter today. We are very excited to have her join us again. She is CEO and co-founder of the DevOps Institute, certified Scrum Master, ITIL expert, and former IT director, Ms. Jane Grohl. Jane, you now have the floor.
Hi, Kelly. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for inviting me to return and talk today a little bit about transformational leadership for DevOps. You know, as Kelly said, I have a little bit of experience in IT. I always say a little longer than I actually probably want to admit to, but I've had an opportunity to be a leader, to be mentored by some really great leaders, and to observe thought leadership and innovative leadership from many, many organizations that I've worked with over the course of time. And hopefully I've been able to capture some of those practices and some of those learnings in today's presentation. I'm also the author of the Agile Service Management Guide. So if you are involved or invested in IT service management and looking at some ways to bridge your process design to DevOps, then encourage you to download it for free from our DevOps Institute. But before I go on, let me tell you a little bit about the DevOps Institute. We're really delighted to be partnering with New Horizons as one of our strategic partners. We're the continuous learning community around emerging DevOps practices, and hopefully today you're going to get some exposure to some of those practices that have been delivering real value in real organizations. Our vision is to facilitate a community where learning is a lifestyle. If you've read the Phoenix Project, if you've been at all involved in the DevOps community, you know that ongoing learning is a key principle. It's the third way of the Phoenix Project, but more importantly, it is something that is necessary as we all start to cross the digital divide. DevOps Institute does accredit some certifications that we've identified as being not only hireable, but critical, particularly if you're moving into a squad model. And our goal is really to inspire discussion and collaboration and transformation through opportunities like this. And again, always grateful to New Horizons for the opportunity to spend some time with you. So let's get started. You know, if you look at the quote on the screen, I think it's really relevant to today, right? Disruption's either going to happen to you or because of you. And truthfully, it's your choice. And it doesn't matter what role you're in. I think historically we wait for our senior leaders to bring disruption or bring innovation or bring our next project to us. But transformational leadership occurs at all levels within the organization. So regardless of the role that you sit in today, I hope that you will think of yourself as a transformational leadership as we go through this. Because if you look historically at the most disruptive organizations, and not just technical organizations, right? Not just platform or software providers, but really disruption in commerce that might not have expected it. You know, we always say the cool thing about a Tesla is not the battery, it's the fact that it's a software-driven car. And are we moving more towards not only partially software-driven cars, but totally software-driven cars? And you look at Uber, and you look at Airbnb, and you look at social media platforms, and then you start to look at banking, and you start to look at government services, and you see a lot of disruption happening in all vertical markets and at all levels, whether you're a small business, a startup, or a large enterprise. So disruption is going to happen, right? And again, this quote is great. It's either going to happen to you or because of you. So the question I think that faces most of us in IT is, yeah, we buy into the fact that transformational leadership is important. Really, what does that mean? That means we have to lead a transformation. And leading a transformation is different than leading an evolution. And I'll address that in a little bit. But the question then becomes, how do you disrupt a system of systems? So if you look at this, the graphic on today's screen, you'll see that over the course of, let's say, the last 20 years, to be generous, IT has built itself as a system of systems. You know, we have a system of software development, and many organizations have moved from waterfall to agile software development, but that's still a system. You know, with DevOps, we have a system of continuous delivery, continuous deployment. And if you haven't moved in that direction, we have a system of service strategy, service design, and service transition, right? And in it of itself, it is a system. And then post-production, we have a system of support and maintenance in the form of incident management, problem management, service level management, knowledge management, et cetera. So IT is a system of systems. But if you look at the top of this screen, there's one important aspect of this graphic that I hope that you recognize as being a critical success factor. And that's that we are all part of the value stream, right? When we start to look at how we stream value from an idea, which is in software development, through and continuing into production, we are all part of the same value stream. So what we're really looking to transform is not the individual systems. That'll be a part of it. What we're really looking to transform is our value stream. How do we deliver more frequently? How do we deliver high quality? How do we deliver in smaller, faster iterations, right? So what we're really looking to transform is that value stream. And the value stream is more than just a series of processes or automation. The value stream, the disruption, occurs first in the way that people think and in the way that people behave, right? We have to have skills across the value stream, but as leaders, and again, remember, regardless of whatever role you're in, you are a leader. As leaders, we have to change and help the way people think and the way that they behave. So if you're not familiar with the State of DevOps report, the DevOps Research and Assessment organization, DORA, works every year with either Puppet this year, I know they're doing some work with Google Cloud, in really kind of collecting what's happening out there in the DevOps space. And so from 2014 to 2017, we certainly have seen a lot of a shift of more enterprises starting to look at DevOps as an approach towards digital transformation. We've certainly seen some maturity in organizations that got started early on, certainly more entry into a DevOps approach. But in last year's report, we're waiting for this year's report, 2018 will come out sometime in the fall. But in 2017's report, there was a very, very heavy emphasis on transformational leadership as a critical success factor. And so, again, I've given you the link to download the full report, some interesting data in there. But if you look at the quotes from this report, transformational leaders' influence is seen in their support of their team's work, both in technical practices and in the team's product management capabilities, right? Second paragraph, the positive or negative influence of leadership flows all the way through to IT performance and organizational performance. So as a leader, right, your influence is very strongly felt throughout all of the branches of IT, right? Your ability to inspire, to motivate, to change the way people think and behave is absolutely critical, and it starts with you, right? It starts with shifting your attitude, doing your own personal transformation in order to be able to influence those that work with you. Now, I talked a little bit about transformational leaderships. Let's do some definitions. So what is a transformational leader? Well, transformational leader, you know, I used these words before. They know how to inspire and motivate. They know how to appeal to individual values, and they help individuals have a sense of purpose, right? So it is a personal approach where individuals feel compelled to fulfill the vision because they understand and they're motivated and inspired to have that sense of purpose, right? It's a very, very personal feeling to be able to come to work, to do your best job, but to feel that your sense of purpose is important. They also know how to encourage teams to work towards a common goal, and their motivation comes from their ability to share a vision, right? To be able to establish core values, to have good communication skills, and to lead by example. And that's very important as well. And, as I just said, it is a personal approach. Zig Ziglar, I don't know if anyone listening knows who Zig Ziglar is. Unfortunately, he passed away several years ago. But Zig Ziglar was a motivational speaker, mostly on the sales side. And, I remember I used to listen to Zig Ziglar audio on my way to work every day. I worked for an organization that was very supportive of that. And Zig said, people won't care how much you know until they know how much you care about them. And I've internalized that a lot over the years by recognizing that people need to know you care, right? That doesn't mean that you're an enabler of bad behavior, that you're not a good, strong leader, but they do need to know that you care about them. If you look in the blue box, it's important to recognize the people element here. And this, by the way, is not soft and fluffy, right? This is very, very tangible. You will follow someone who inspires you. And you probably all have personal stories that reflect that, right? A person with vision and passion can achieve great things, right? And that's individual, right? That's not necessarily a team. An individual who really feels that they have the vision and the passion, and that's something the leader can instill into those that work with them and those that follow them. And the best way to get things done is to inject enthusiasm and energy, right? So your energy reflects and influences those that work with you. And so those are really the characteristics of a transformational leader. If you sort of look at this book by Bernard Bass, right, Leadership and Performance Beyond Expectation, there were a lot of characteristics of a transformational leadership that can now kind of be converted into very tangible action items. First and foremost, you have to be a model of integrity and fairness, right? Now, that may sound very, very simple, but oftentimes leaders are tested in terms of their ability to fulfill their integrity and fairness, right? So, how you treat one employee or how you allow certain things from one employee compared to another employee, how you deal with situations that really test your integrity, and how you make sure that you fairly represent the goals, the successes, and the challenges that face your team, I think, are critical skills here. A transformational leader knows how to set and communicate very clear goals, but also has very high expectations of their teams, right? So again, this is not about being an enabler of low performance behavior. It is very much about setting those high expectations, but making sure there are very clear goals that sit behind them. They're very encouraging. They know how to provide support. They also know how to provide recognition. A long time ago, there was a book, The 1 Minute Manager. I don't know if anybody read it, but The 1 Minute Manager spoke to the fact that we often criticize more than we compliment. And so the 1 Minute Manager was find time to be able to recognize the good performance of the people that you work with. A good transformational leader knows how to stir people's emotion. That's what I've been speaking about. It's about how do you inspire an individual? How do you give them a sense of purpose? How do you really light that passion and fire in them for a particular project or a particular vision or a particular disruption, right? You get people to look beyond their self-interest. And I love this last bullet. You inspire people to reach for the improbable. Right? The improbable, that's disruption. I took a webinar recently, and it was about a book called Scaling Up. So if you work for a small organization and you're looking to scale, it happens to be a very, very good book. And it talks about transformational leadership and certainly inspires all of us to set some very specific action items about that. But when looking at goals, one of the things the leader of this webinar or seminar actually said was, the numbers should make you uncomfortable but not sick, right? I think that's a great litmus test. I use that with my own team. When we set our goals, I ask them, does that number make you uncomfortable, but it shouldn't make you sick? So think about that. I think it's a good way to really kind of benchmark whether your goals are improbable enough to be disruptive, but not unrealistic so that they're not achievable. So transformational leaders know how to groom their cultural skills. One of the things that's emerged out of the DevOps movement is really interest in some cultural transformation practices. If you look at the quote, "You can't change culture." We talk about culture as if it's a product, right? We talk about cultural transformation as if we can change a product. And the reality is, culture does not transform. People transform, and they only transform when they're inspired to do so. So you can't change culture, but you can change behavior, right? And the behavior will ultimately become culture. So I would encourage you to think of the organization that you've worked with. Hopefully it's today's organization, right? Where the culture really inspired you to go beyond the status quo, to go beyond where you were today, and to think of a future where the organization really goes to the next level, or it captures a part of the market, or your contribution or your idea can really help pivot that organization to meet modern goals, right? Again, we're in a very, very interesting time when you look at competition and when you look at organizations that have been able to pivot, even very old legacy enterprises that have been able to pivot because the culture, the behavior of the people that work within that culture was supportive enough to be able to do that. If you're not familiar with Westrum or Lalou, I would certainly encourage you to do some research, whether you actually read the papers or do some Googling around. I'm particularly fond of Westrum because Westrum talks about different ways or different organizational structures and the flow of information. Going from the very, very bureaucratic approach where information is held tightly, it's not transparent, it doesn't flow well, to very, very generative organizations where information flows very freely, and provide some really interesting models for how you can transform. Look at the characteristics of your culture, first of all, to identify where you are today in terms of your flow of information, and how you can possibly move forward so that information flows much more freely. The reason that's important is communication is often the gap that prevents people from being innovative in their thinking, that prevents them from doing their jobs effectively, prevents leaders from being able to identify trends or patterns or anti-patterns going forward. So certainly I would encourage you to do some research on both Westrum and Lalou. But I said, particularly if you're having a communication issue or information isn't flowing from your system of systems, Westrum has really emerged in the DevOps space as a model that enterprises that are improving their internal culture are really starting to look at. Transformational leadership, the shift from, say, servant leadership to transformational leadership. I'll talk about that in a minute. And then if you're not familiar with the Spotify squad model, and again, we'll talk a little bit more about that, but if you're not familiar with the Spotify squad model, then I would encourage you to research that as well. Spotify took a very interesting approach to agile development. And so instead of having the traditional Scrum teams, they actually started to look at a model where they built squads. And if you think of kind of the military approach to squads, a squad doesn't have all members with the same competency. A squad has members that maybe share a core competency, but have a strong breadth of knowledge across that. I'll speak a little bit more about that. But then they've also taken squads and collected them into tribes. They've created guilds and chapters that are centers of interest. And so really, really interesting model in terms of organizational design. And that's been a key aspect of their transformational leadership. Interesting thing about the Spotify squad model is there are organizations around the world that have started to as part of their transformation, started to move from a team model to a squad model, and looking at how to do that at a large enterprise level. I know ING, the insurance company out of the Netherlands, has very much adopted a squad model. There are many others that are really starting to look at, how do we create these cross-functional environments instead of these single silos. So you need transformational leadership. And again, it's not just a buzzword, right? It's leading a transformation. So make sure you understand, what we're specifically talking about. But you need that in order to support this very generative, high trust culture. And I would tell you very honestly, I don't think that's where we're coming from. IT is a very young organization. We're 50 years old, 60 years old, maybe as a part of the business. We built this system of systems. We've built these incredible silos. So in order to break down those silos, to create this very generative flow of information, and I think most importantly, to start to create a higher trust environment, there has to be a level of leadership that understands what's required in order to be able to do that, right? If we start to look at technologies and processes that enable higher productivity, you also need transformational leadership for that as well. In IT, we're really good at automating the rest of the business. We're not always as good at automating ourselves. And so being able to move from manual task to an automative task also requires leading a transformation as well. We need transformational leadership for supporting experimentation. I mentioned the third way of the Phoenix Project. That talks a lot about learning and experimentation. And so the idea of experiments in IT, taking a very, very scientific approach, has to be supported by leadership, because we have to move away from a blame culture. And so having a leader that encourages experimentation and understands risk, understands fast remediation, that will help us be more innovative and certainly improve the ability to disrupt. And then, of course, you need strong leadership that's willing to work across the silos, to break down the silos, achieve strategic alignment, open up that value stream, and make the system of systems a single system where everybody involved in that value stream is really engaged in systems thinking. So what's the difference, right? In Agile, we talk a lot about servant leadership, right? I'm a Scrum Master, and so as a Scrum Master, my job is to be a servant leader where I focus really on individual development and performance. I protect the team, I remove impediments, right? I serve those that I lead. And I serve them on much more of an individual basis to be able to groom them to the highest level of their personal performance. And that's still necessary, right? This is not mutually exclusive. The difference with a transformational leader is that a transformational leader's focus is on getting the people that follow them to identify with the values, the vision of the organization, right? To create a common goal, to create a common vision, to be able to have everybody kind of not only marching in the same direction, but marching in the same direction with passion, right? So that they're engaging in the organizational objectives, but they're doing it because they have a sense of what's in it for me. They have a sense of purpose. They have a sense that what they're doing is important. So it may sound like a very subtle difference between servant leadership and transformational leadership. They're not mutually exclusive, right? Leaders should always serve those that follow them. But if you're going to lead them through a transformation, then you need to help them understand what the transformation looks like, what the journey will be, and how do we know that we're there, right? And by the way, we're never there, right? So that's part of the transformation as well. What are the milestones? What's the vision? And how do we keep innovating in order to meet market demand? So, I mentioned a few slides ago about the value stream, and that sometimes we look at our individual systems as being kind of complete, right? So if you're an agile software developer, you work within a Scrum team, and if you're, doing continuous delivery or change and release management, you work within that team. And if you're post-production, you only see kind of the lens on post-production. But the reality is transformational leaders understand their end-to-end value stream. They understand that the value stream is not going to be improved purely by automation, right? That's kind of our go-to place in IT, is that we like to buy something. So we like to buy automation. It's not necessarily going to be improved by a single framework. So as much as Agile and Lean and ITIL and continuous integration, continuous delivery, each have a lot of great practices, and each deliver a level of value. None of them are the total solution, all right? None of them are the magic bullet. None of them can really solve all of IT's problems. I always joke, none of them can bring you world peace, right? Each of them collectively inspiring and instilling practices and organizational change management together will achieve a great deal. But I think sometimes our loyalties to a single framework really prevents us from looking at that end-to-end value stream. So transformational leader understands that adopt and adapt means to take the best of those practices and being able to converge them into a custom framework that works for your organization. And then I think I've spoken quite a bit so far about the cultural aspect, right? Buying tools, investing in agile practices or ITIL, or buying automation for continuous delivery or continuous integration is easy. Transforming people is not so much, right? There is a greater challenge and a lot more effort required to helping to transform the people within your culture. I said this before, and I think this is a really powerful image, right? Transformational leaders know how to break down the silos. Now, there is a lot of emotional quotient associated with breaking down silos, right? We've built those silos over a long period of time, and silos speak the same language, they use the same practices, they use the same tools, they have a line manager that shares some of the same competencies of those within their silo. So breaking down a silo is more than reorganizing who people report to or what teams they work on. There is a very strong transformational requirement or transformational effort to breaking down the silo, because we now need to cross-pollinate vocabulary. We now need to start building interfaces between tools. We now need to be able to transform the way people interact with each other, but also the way the tools interact with each other or the processes interact with each other. And we have to give the middle managers a sense of purpose, right? One of the greatest challenges to DevOps right now is middle management, because senior management has a vision in terms of what the outcome should be. Practitioners, particularly those that are grooming new skills, are very excited about what the future possibility is in terms of their own talents. And middle managers, however you define middle management, is trying to figure out where they fit. Do they lead a squad now, right? If their silo is broken, does that take them forward? Does that take them backwards? So don't underestimate the personal issues that are associated with breaking down silos. And it really does go beyond just, hey, let's integrate our process, or let's integrate our tools, or even let's start speaking the same language. There is a very personal side of it, and as transformational leaders will understand that. So this is one of my favorite topics, and I hope you'll bear with me, and I hope you find it valuable as well. As part of transformation, individual practitioners, IT professionals, need to kind of take a different approach to skilling, and their leaders need to support that. And so, IT grew up in a history of silos where everybody in the silo has the same competency. And if you're a developer, you're a developer. And if you're an infrastructure person or a support person or a DBA, pick any of the competencies across IT. That was your thing, right? That was your specialty. That's what they hired you for. And so you kind of worked a little bit with some knowledge of other capabilities, but pretty much that was your secret sauce, right? That's what you do best, is a specific competency, and you were hired to be a specialist. And so we call that an I-shaped individual, right? An I-shaped individual is very specifically a specialist in a single aspect of IT, whether you're a developer or operations person or in between the two. Well, in the modern age, as we cross the digital divide, every IT professional now has to move from being an I-shape to being T-shaped. You might have heard me speak about this before. You might have heard others speak about it before, but we now need to groom a breadth of knowledge. And it isn't just being familiar, but it also doesn't necessarily mean that you have to acquire another specialty. But you must start to understand a certain level of competency in a variety of disciplines. So for example, if you are a developer, you now need to become a test-driven developer, where you can write test cases with your first line of code. In the past, you might have pushed your product downstream to a quality assurance individual or to a tester or even into automation, but you need to be the first test writer for whatever you're developing. And so a test-driven developer, first of all, is highly desired from a talent acquisition perspective, but also is going to be the norm. So if you are not familiar with testing to the point of being able to write a test case, then you need to start grooming your testing skills. If you are not a security professional, again, formerly a downstream activity, in DevOps, we shift that left. So if you have very, very little familiarity with security testing, right? In DevSecOps, we look at security as code, then you need to start grooming those skills. And as a leader, you need to support the grooming of those skills with your followers, because you're either going to groom the skills or you're going to hire the skills. But the multidimensional T-shaped IT professional is not only the future, it is today. Right? The need for IT professionals to move away from being single specialties. Now, you may eventually evolve into being pie-shaped or cone-shaped, where you do have more than one specialty. But for now, we are encouraging individuals that may have been hired for a specific competency to start really grooming their skills. We call it upskilling. You might hear it called cross-skilling. We call it, essentially skilling the squad. Right? You really do need to be able to support your squad because you have enough knowledge about a lot of different disciplines in order to perform certain functions. So it's not familiarity, right? There is a threshold, of course, where you may need to reach out to somebody who it is their core competency, like a security professional or QA professional. Automation architect, for example, but your breadth of knowledge should be at least deep enough that you can perform some core tasks within that discipline, right? The transformational leader is going to inspire continuous learning, right? Going to provide opportunities for continuous learning, because it's only through practice that we become masters. And so again, I'll go back to the third way of DevOps. Practicing creates mastery, right? Firefighters, law enforcement people, they practice scenarios on a regular basis, putting themselves at risk. It's the only way to become a master. And in IT, we're so risk adverse, as well we should be, but intelligent risk taking means that we also have to encourage that level of continuous learning, the ability to practice, and the ability to become a master through learning and through those practices. So skill the squad, right? I mean, that's what I was speaking on during our last slide, is that if you're going to create a squad, and again, create a vision, right, of whether you personally have military experience or you've seen films that really look at kind of what a squad is like. Build a vision in your head as a leader of what a squad and how it looks like and how a squad should be made up. They are not homogenous individuals, right? They're not all developers. There may be developers, testers, site reliability engineers, post-production, support teams, all part of that squad. But that squad needs to be cross-functional. You need squads of T-shaped people in order to cross that transformation, right? To cross that digital divide. So skill the squad, right? Skill the squad. Let the developers learn security and testing. Let the testers learn how to code. Let the infrastructure folks learn how to test. Really create that kind of core competency and breadth of knowledge, because that's the best way to have a high-performing squad. And it is the best way for those squads collectively to cross over through the transformation, right? And you as a leader need to provide that vision, that passion, that opportunity for them to be able to do that, right? It is a lot of responsibility to be a transformational leader, but if you do it successfully, those that follow you are going to be on a journey that is going to take them personally, professionally, and organizationally into a very, very disruptive future, which means the disruptive future, you may hear the word disruption and go, oh, I don't know if I like that. But the disruptive future is going to be survival of the fittest. You can look at so many vertical markets and recognize that maybe they didn't have squads yet, right? But they had a vision. They had a vision where we don't own any cars, but we'll deliver the equivalent of transportation services, Uber, right? We have a vision where the car is driven by software. We have a vision where people will open up their homes or their second properties to serve as a lodging solution, right? We have a vision. And your competitor may be sitting in a garage, maybe 25 years old, right? And is thinking disruptively. So skill the squad. And again, if you haven't had a chance to look at the Spotify squad model video, it's a really entertaining video, but it's also a really informative video. So guess what? Everybody can be a transformational leader, right? You can lead one person, you can lead a team of 9, you can lead an organization of thousands, right? Transformation is a very, very organic process. Sometimes it happens because 2 people working together experiment. Sometimes it happens because the CIO provides resourcing and vision for a different future. Everybody's a transformational leader. There is certification around DevOps Leader, so I do want to take a second because New Horizons does offer DevOps Leader as one of its certification courses, and we're really delighted at DevOps Institute to accredit that. I'll take a little look at the certification model in the next slide, but I really specifically want to introduce you to the DevOps Leader training and certification. So there are a lot of great leadership classes out there, and maybe you've had a chance to take some of them over the course of your professional career. I have, and I've learned a lot about communication and managing conflict and how to be a good, strong leader and setting goals and objectives, and I wouldn't change that experience for anything. But leading DevOps is a little bit different. There are definitely practices that are enabling transformational leadership. Practices like, how do you design your organization for DevOps? How do you create a squad, right? How do you map your value stream and understanding what value stream mapping is and having some experience to do that? Which services should you consider moving into a automated approach, right? And then also looking at the business value. What's going to be the expected outcome or return on taking a different approach to IT software delivery? looking at IT as a software factory, and if you're going to lead that factory, how are you going to inspire and lead beyond that? So, if anything I've said today resonates with you, I certainly would encourage you to attend a DevOps leader course. It is about leading DevOps, and very, very unique and very, very specific. And partners like New Horizons are bringing that into the classroom so that individuals can start their own transformational journeys. So if you're interested in learning more about DevOps certification, DevOps Institute, our model is not traditional. It's not hierarchical in the sense of some kind of ambiguous designation. I'm an ITIL expert, right? That's something that I have to explain, right? In our situation, we really researched what are the emerging skills and how do you skill a squad. And so DevOps testing, continuous delivery architecture, DevOps leadership, and DevSecOps, DevOps and security, have really emerged as not only important skills to groom, but also important skills to hire. So our scheme is very based on that, plus Agile Service Management. I'll let New Horizons tell you a little bit more about these courses, but please know at DevOps Institute, we're really proud of our scheme, and we really feel that our scheme delivers individual competencies, but also organizational capabilities. Okay, on that note, Kelly, do you have any questions for me?
Yeah, we haven't received any, but I wanted to give people a chance to go ahead and ask those questions if you have any, and we can have Jane answer those over audio. While you guys are doing that, I also wanted to just remind you that you will receive a link to today's session recording as well as a PDF of the PowerPoint presentation, and you can go back and view that at any time you'd like. Also wanted to point you all to our website at newhorizons.com. If you are familiar with New Horizons and have a rep at your local center, please reach out to them regarding our DevOps courses and certifications. If you are not familiar with New Horizons, you can go ahead and visit our website at newhorizons.com. You can do a zip code search there to find the center nearest you and reach out to them for more information. So Jane, it looks like we don't have any questions today, so I think we can go ahead and wrap up today's session. Thank you again so much for joining us. We always love having you present webinars for New Horizons.
My pleasure.
All right, and thanks so much everyone for joining. I hope you'll join us for future webinars. We're going to have Jane come back again next month. That'll be scheduled a little later this week, so I will keep you guys posted on that as well. And once again, visit our website for any updated webinar information and to register for upcoming webinar sessions that are all complimentary to you. Thanks again so much, everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks. Take care.